Hi, I'm Maria Burns-Ortiz, Executive Director of the Global Game Jam. If you're watching this session, you're here to learn more about GGJ Next, running a GGJ Next Jam site, the Games for Change G4C Student Challenge, and how that initiative intersects with Global Game Jam Next. Now, I have to start by saying thank you so much. If you're watching this, you are either already signed up to run a GGJ Next site or you're considering it. Now, as someone who spent years working with middle and high school youth around creating games, design, and development before coming over to Global Game Jam, I have to tell you, if you have done this before, you know what you're in for. And if you haven't, it is a really exciting and rewarding opportunity to be part of shaping the next generation of game designers, developers, creators, and just really playing a part in helping to shape the future of this industry. We are incredibly grateful for your interest and can't wait to see the games that your students create. So, to give you an overview, the Global Game Jam organizes the world's largest game jam. It is a non-competitive game jam where folks from around the world come together to create games. Most recently, this year in 2025, we had over 35,000 participants at almost 800 sites across 97 countries. Creating games around a central theme. This year's theme was Bubble. If you haven't checked those games out, there are so many fun and incredible interpretations. Creating over 12,000 games, right? And while creating games is part of it, it isn't the only, or even I would argue, the main goal of the Global Game Jam, right? The goal of the Global Game Jam is to bring people together around game design and development, making it possible for people to build out their networks, learn new skills, try new tools, and just really center around our core mission of, collaboration, experimentation, and innovation when it comes to creating games. Now, Global Game Jam focuses on adults, so it's ages 16 or 18 and up. But that's why we created GGJ Next. GGJ Next is our annual game jam event, focused on middle through high school youth and getting them involved and interested and engaged in creating games. So depending on where you are, middle high school is late primary, secondary school, but think about it as kids ages 10 to 18-year-olds who've yet to graduate. Now, the last several years, it's kind of bounced around as to when GGJ Next has been held. Most recently, it was held around the same time as the Global Game Jam itself, which is towards the end of January. But this year, we have partnered with Games for Change as its Student Challenge Jam partner. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means, as well as how we run Global Game Jam sites as we go through the next little bit here. Now, I've gotten a lot of questions as we've started to roll this out about what is the difference between GGJ and GGJ Next sites? What's the difference between hosting them? All of these are really great questions. And so I wanted to start off with a quick overview, which is which. So Global Game Jam, as I mentioned, is for adults or, almost adults, right? So ages 16 and up or 18 and up, depending on your site, depending on different things. But it's always at least 16, in many cases, 18 and up. It is a 48-hour sprint marathon, but this 48-hour constant jam window that's held over the course of a weekend typically. It is always held during the GGJ next, or the GGJ jam dates. Those are late January typically. This year they were between the 20th and the 26th. Games must include the Global Game Jam theme. So I mentioned this year was Bubble, but all games created under GGJ have to have that universal theme. Teams then will upload those games to the Global Game Jam platform, and that's what the final result product piece is. And then Global Game Jam for those does not provide individual site funding, right? We work with grassroots organizers around the world to support their work and build out their sites, but we aren't actually able to, just in part because of the sheer number of sites that we have, to provide any kind of direct funding or support to those sites. Now, GGJ Next is for youth, so it's focused on ages 10 to 18. Because anyone who has ever worked with children knows that 48 hours straight is not realistic or reasonable. These jams are 4 to 6 hours, and they can be spread out. They can be spread out over a couple of days. They can be spread out over, a couple of weeks. Really, it's important to us that we make it flexible because there's not one single one size fits all approach when it comes to working with youth. And if you're an after school program or a school program or a weekend program, whatever that looks like. So we are saying for GGJ Next Jam, the idea is it's 4 to 6 hours of actual jam time, kind of that creation piece, but it doesn't have to be all at once. It doesn't have to be all in one day or one weekend, right? But that idea of it can be spread out. The GGJ Next Jams, we did kick them off with the Global Game Jam itself, so starting in late January, and then they can run anytime as long as they are done by the first week of April. The games for GGJ Next this year are centered around a G4C social impact theme. I will tackle a little bit what those are in a few minutes. And then at the end of it, you will actually submit games to the G4C portal. You can also use, as part of that step, an itch.io page that we have that will kind of be a hosting place, but the end, you will submit your game to the G4C portal, and we will walk you through that as well. And then we do have stipends for international sites, so sites outside of the US. We actually have stipends available this year, so in 2025, to be able to support sites in hosting these GGJ Next Jams. So the Games for Change G4C Student Challenge is actually an annual game design competition. And the idea of it is to engage youth around creating digital games that are inspired by the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It is a challenge and it is a competition, but it isn't about just trying to make the best game to win. Obviously, it's a competition, but really it's about amplifying student voices. It's about empowering youth to come up with solutions to these very large global problems and see if they can come up with ways that they, through their experiences, through their knowledge, can tackle them through games and really get them thinking not just as game developers and game designers, although that is certainly part of that challenge, but also as problem solvers, as citizens in the world who can actually enact change. So it is a really inspiring competition challenge, and that's why we really are excited to be part of supporting that and being able to hopefully get a bunch of really great games created by students around the world, like the ones at your jam site, as part of that. And so there are a number of award categories, and the Game of the Year winning team will get a $10,000 US scholarship. So if you want to run a G4C GGJ Next Jam, so all of the GGJ Next Jams in 2025 are G4C focused. The very basic, like the most highest level, what do I need to do? So you need to host a jam for kids between ages 10 and 18, sometime between now, whenever you're watching this, and the first week of April 2025. I guess if you're watching it after April 2025, come back for 2026. But yes, so between now and the first week of April, the students will make games around one of 3 social impact themes. I'll touch on those in a minute, and then submit them to the G4C Student Challenge. And we will be here at Global Game Jam as an organization at every step of the way to assist you with this process. So as an organizer for the Global Game Jam Next, what you need to do, the things that kind of will fall on the organizer is first, make sure you have a space. It is important for these jams that they are happening in person. So we really are focused on making sure that you have a space that you can do this. The space must have, and these are the general overview requirements, right? So having a space. The space needs to have access to basic technology for G4C submissions. Submitting to the G4C Student Challenge is part of having a GGJ Next Jam in 2025 as part of the Student Challenge Jam. So in order to do that, even if you are not making a digital game, I'll talk about that. You don't have to make a digital game. There is a tabletop category. There is also a character design category. But you do need to have some level of basic technology because in order to submit to the challenge, the students will need to upload to the G4C portal, which is an online portal. If you are doing digital games, you must provide access to the hardware and software. So we can't expect youth to have all of these things and bring their own. So it's important that if you are a site organizer, you have that access to the hardware and software if you're doing a digital game, or if you're doing tabletop games, which is also an option. And it's really a great way to get kids engaged in game design and development, especially if they're younger kids, or if you don't have access to as much technology as you might need across all the students, or if um, you just are interested in doing tabletop games, right? So there's not a right or a wrong. There's not a category that you need to do or not do, but it's a really great option for a number of sites, especially. We see a lot of these working with youth. And so if you are doing that, you need to have some basic materials for creating games. And we're not talking tons of things, but materials, supplies that kids can use when they're creating these prototypes and their games. We do have stipends available to cover space and materials cost as part of running a GGJ Next Jam. You're able to apply for a GGJ Next Jam stipend. So while you need to have all of access to all of these things, we're here to, again, like I said, support you and help you and make it possible that you can run these. The organizer is also responsible for recruiting participants for the jam. So finding the youth, I know many GGJ Next Jam site organizers work in education, work with after school programs. Some of you have done this for years, and so you have connections, but really it's on the organizer to make sure that you're going to be able to recruit the participants. You're on the ground in the countries where you're running the jams, and so you're going to know far better than us who to connect with, how to connect with those folks. So the organizer is responsible for making sure that the participants, the youth, are participating in the jam. And then the organizer will lead the actual jam itself. So GGJ Next, we can provide resources. There are G4C Game Jam guides, which you will get from us when you register to run a jam. There are lesson plans that you can use. So the Game Jam guide is great. We, on the Global Game Jam side, can help provide access to mentors and support from the GGJ network, but the organizer will ultimately be in charge of leading the jam itself. The jams should be a minimum of 4 hours. And by this, I mean, the jams basically should be long enough that at the end of the jam, you can submit something to the G4C Student Challenge. This could be a game. It could be a character design. It could be a tabletop game, right? But the jams should be, we say a minimum of 4 hours because we found that to be the shortest amount of time that can actually really be done. Some are 6 hours, some are 8 hours, 10 hours. They're split up over multiple days. But ultimately, the goal is to have it be a reasonable amount of time that, is manageable working with you, and then that they can definitely create something that they can submit to the G4C Student Challenge. And the games, they are, a lot of times they are shorter games. They're not going to be these large, huge epics. I mean, we understand that we're working with youth, and the G4C Student Challenge knows that these are youth games being developed by 10 to 18-year-olds. They are not expecting, this giant 3D virtual world epic, right? So the idea is getting kids creating and making games, finding enough time that they can create something that then can be submitted. The jams can be run during a weekend. They can be run as part of the school day, part of an after-school program, however fits, right? Whatever works. So we can provide you with best practices. We can do all these things, but we're also deferring to you to know what's going to work best in your community with the youth that you're working with and in the environments that you're in. So these are, again, best practices that we found, but certainly we're here to support you. As I mentioned, students can submit a variety of games, right? So they can do digital games, they can do games in Minecraft, they can do tabletop games, they can do character design, right? Participants are expected to create a game. There's actually a whole list in the Student Challenge Handbook, which you will also get from us. I'll hit on that in a little bit here, but you will have a link to that to be able to go through. But yeah, there's a lot of different ways that students can get involved depending on your time, depending on the access to technology you have, depending on their interests, depending on lots of different things, right? Their skill levels. So this is not something where it has to be this one thing that they do. There's a couple of different options. And again, we defer to you. So if you say, I want all of my students to do a tabletop game, if I want them all to do a digital game, you can decide this. You can leave it up to them. But these are the way that games can be submitted. And then again, participants will upload that to the G4C submission portal at the end of your jam. Uh, as I said, Global Game Jam is not about creating competition. It is about collaboration and innovation, experimentation, learning new things, trying new things. And that is, even though the G4C Student Challenge is a challenge, it has awards, it has a prize at the end. It is not about winning. And I know that might sound strange, and the Games for Change people have said that is completely fine for me to say because they share this goal. But the primary goal is about getting students involved and creating, right? How do we develop and cultivate and foster an interest in making games and tackling social challenges, right? That's what this challenge is about. And so, yes, there are prizes at the end. There will be a Game of the Year winner, but it is also about just taking part of this global challenge and coming up with ways that you can create games to really look at these important issues and think about how game makers can also be change makers. So for the jam for the student challenge piece, there are two divisions. As I mentioned, the jam is for students ages 10 to 18. There's a junior division, so that's kind of like a middle school, late primary school, but ages 10 to 13. And then there is a senior division, which is secondary school, sometimes lower secondary school. Around the world, there are lots of different names for grades and levels in schools. So we have just gone with ages, right? So junior division, age 10 to 13, senior division, 14 to 18. Your jam site can have students in both divisions. There's nothing wrong with that. You can be running a junior and senior divisions at the same time, completely fine. Teams must be between 1 and 4 students. So you can't have a team that is 20 kids, right? When you actually go in to submit it, there will be a list where you will list student members. And so teams can be up to 4 students. And the only exception for this is if they do the character design category, that's an individual submission. But otherwise, having kids work in teams of 1 to 4. Now, again, when you're doing design things, when you're doing some of the learning about the themes, all of these things can be very much collaborative as a full group. But when we're actually looking at how many people are on each game team, 1 to 4. Now, if you have not signed up to run a Global Game Jam Next site, you can do it here. Go to the Global Game Jam website, globalgamejam.org, and where that yellow box is, there won't actually be a yellow box on the website, but that is, you'll see that box there that says Join GGJ Next. Sign up there to register a site. So if you are watching this because you were maybe thinking about doing it and now you say, oh my goodness, she's convinced me. If not, wait till the end, I promise. But, and want to do a site, you will go up to sign up there, go over to our page to sign up there. If you've already signed up, then thank you so much. And we'll just keep going. But yeah, globalgamejam.org, and then click on sign up to join GGJ Next. Now, after you've done that, a member of the GG Next team will reach out to coordinate next steps. So basically, we'll just talk to you a little bit, give you some more information, answer any questions you have, any of that. We are here to help and support you in running a GGJ Next jam. The jam must be before the first week of April, as I mentioned. And then you will have access, you must have access to an in-person site that you can use. So those are kind of the two main things that we will ask you. We'll have some other questions, but those are the two things that if you can check both of those boxes and say, yes, we have a site, yes, we can do it in April. And if you need funds to help cover that site, that's why we have stipends available. So again, just making sure that you have those things in place, and then we're here to help guide you through the rest. Now, Global Game Jam in 2025 has stipends available to support sites outside of the US and running GGJ Next jams. Now, if you are inside of the US, that does not mean that you can't do a GGJ Next jam site. 100%. Please sign up. We would love to have you. We just don't this year have stipends for the US-based sites. We are hoping to be able to expand that. This is a pilot, a first year kind of partnership, and so we are looking at how we can expand that. But this year we're focusing initially on the global sites outside of the US. But yes, so anybody can run a GGJ Next Jam. If you are though outside of the US and you are looking to request a stipend, there is not a minimum number of students required. But we are saying that sites should ideally have 10 plus participants to request a stipend. And then to receive a stipend, you again must submit the games to the G4C portal. That is part of the jams, but that's a commitment that you make in terms of if you're receiving a stipend. And like I said, our goal here is to walk you through the steps and make things as easy as possible. Now, the G4C Student Challenge, because it is intersecting with the Global Game Jam Next this year, I want to give you a little bit more of an overview on that. Basically, as I said, or if you've done Global Game Jam before, you know that each year we have a theme that games are around for the Global Game Jam, right? I said this year was Bubble, last year was Make Me Laugh. So for the G4C Student Challenge, the games must center around, and for the GGJ Next Jam, the games must center around one of three G4C themes. The games do not need to incorporate the Global Game Jam theme. So that is separate from this, and I'll get to the themes in a minute, but it should be around one of the three G4C themes, and don't worry about Bubble. If you want to throw Bubble in, great, but not required. We have lesson plans and video resources are available for you around each theme that you will get from us to hopefully make that process of either planning it or working it with your students as easy as possible. So the G4C Student Challenge impact themes are, I feel like there needs to be a drum roll, but there are three themes. So the first theme is nurture yourself with nature. And this is looking at how to build connections with nature, right? This really great opportunity, a great theme for this year, kind of looking at not the future of our planet and our climate and looking at it through this beautiful positive lens, right? And so if you go to the G4C Student Challenge site, you will see a page that looks like this one here, where it says Nurture Yourself Nature, and it will give you a larger breakdown, a summary of the issue, of what the games might focus on, and about how you can kind of create games and themes around that. So looking at the beauty of nature, thinking about all of those things connecting that bond with nature. So nurture yourself with nature is the first theme. The second theme is the Peace Formers Challenge. And so looking at how students think we can create a more peaceful society, a place where everyone can thrive and live in a peaceful world, right? So that is the second challenge. And again, there's a lot more. I'm kind of going over them quickly here because you can read about it on the website and it's a lot deeper in depth. And they have, like I said, links to additional resources and lesson plans and all of those things. But that is the second theme, Peace Formers Challenge. And then the third theme is Outplay Hunger. So looking at hunger obviously is a global issue, and then looking at it though through the lens of nutrition, through minimizing food waste, through lots of different ways, again, that we can hopefully help tackle this issue and come up with solutions. So Outplay Hunger being the third one. Also, like I said, if you go to the Games for Change Student Challenge site, you will be able to see the kind of in the middle, the bar of the menu there, theme, click on that, and you'll have the themes drop down. You can also see from that image of the website there, you can see where the resources are, you can see where the competition handbook is. So There's two places you can go for actually ideas and inspiration. Actually, you can see there under the 2024 arcade, if you go to the Games for Change site, you can see games from last year, the winners from last year, and what that looks like. And I think that's really helpful to go and look at past games that have been successful, not to try and replicate them, telling kids, you are brilliant creators, you can come up with incredible ideas, but just to see what that looks like, to say, oh, these were the games that did well last year, to be able to have an idea of what that looks like, but not looking at it through the lens of, I have to be better than that, but to just have an idea of what that looks like. Um, Topically, if you're looking at games too, we also have partnership with the G4C University Student Challenge, and that rolled out as part of the Global Game Jam. And so sometimes when I used to work with kids around game design development, they hard part was like, what should I do? What should I do? Thinking about it and not telling them to cut, but just give some ideas of this is what those kind of games look like. Here's how some people tackled the topic of peace formers or outplay hunger or nurture yourself with nature. And just giving them this opportunity to see and play with some games can be really helpful to get kids who maybe haven't gotten into who are brand new to this to give them some ideas, because sometimes you tackle and you're like, there's so much going on, right? There's so many ways you can take it. And so this is, if it works for you, if it's something that you think would be helpful for your youth, have them check out some of the games that have been done around the topic, keeping in mind, and you can let them know they were done by, adults. They were not done by kids. And so, don't feel like you have to compete with this. Don't get overwhelmed. Just give for some ideas. And then, like I said, the games from last year as well can be helpful. So ideas, inspiration, they can check other games that have tackled this topic, or you can say, hey, we're just going to jump right in. Now, for one of the things that we have found, and like I said, the goal of this is not just to tell you here's exactly all how to do it and what works, but giving you some best practices. So one of the things that has come out of the jams that we've done, conversations with Games for Change, our experience working with youth, is that if you do have youth who are younger, it's especially if they're in that junior division, so ages 10 to 13, we really recommend that as a site leader, you pick one theme and then have all the kids make it around that theme so that your whole group is working around nurture with yourself with nature or outplay hunger or peace formers. And that way you're able to, when you're helping, give them some information, kind of having them do some research, look up, learn more, think about how they're going to tackle this topic both within the game and as a subject, right? It's usually easier. You pull the lesson plans from the G4C site, but to have all of the students focused on one topic for the junior division, it'll just make it easier. That way you're kind of driving everyone around one theme as opposed to kind of having to serve a whole bunch of different themes at the same time. And the idea of keeping those GMs relatively short, keeping everybody engaged. So if it's about everybody's topic, they'll all be engaged. So recommendation, not a rule, but recommendation if you're working with younger students, pick one theme. You can pick it as the site leader. You can have the kids vote on it, but pick one theme. If they're older, it's up to you. So you can still say, if they're the senior division, ages 14 to 18, you can still say, I'm just going to do one theme. You can pick that, or you can let them decide if they want to pick from different themes. There's a little bit more flexibility there. We again defer to you to figure out what's going to work best for your site. But for the older youth, giving them that flexibility can be good, or saying, hey, we're all going to focus on just this one theme can also work. There's not a right or a wrong, although if you're working with younger kids, we recommend just going with one theme. Now, the award categories, as you see, there's a number of different award categories. So there's one for each of the best of the themes. There's also a Made with Unity category, a Made with Minecraft category, a Best International Game category, Tabletop Game, and Character Design Challenge. And then there will be the overall Game of the Year, which will win the prize. So it's not just one Game of the Year award. There's lots of different possibilities. The students can submit themselves under. And so if you are an international team and you make your game with Nurture Yourself with Nature as the theme and you use Unity, you can enter under multiple award categories. So just so you know, it's not one of those things you have to pick one. You can fit under any of them. So yeah, you can be up for multiple awards, and then you can hopefully win one. If not, it's just the idea of actually creating something, getting a game out there, getting a character design out there, getting something really cool out there and making it happen. So submitting your game to G4C, the official deadline is April 18th, 2025. But because everybody has always, been in those situations, especially, the deadline that we're asking for is at the end of your GGJ Next Jam. So when you have the kids sitting there in front of you, have them upload the games then, because the last thing we want is for people to say, "Oh, I forgot to submit it. I forgot to upload it. I forgot to." Just have it be the last step of your jam, and that's where we have the jams actually end the first week of April. So there's a little bit of time so that we just don't have to worry about that. But making sure that, and as part of that, that's one of the asks that we will have to you in running a GGJ Next site, is just making sure that the games get submitted to the G4C portal at the end of the jam. When you have registered and been approved as a GGJ Next site, when your jam date is set and you're getting started, you will get a step-by-step instructions from us, from our team, probably from the amazing Jess, who will be your primary point of contact in GGJ Next, in your GGJ Next journey. And you will get the instructions from us on how to upload to the G4C portal. You can also access the portal from the G4C Student Challenge site. But again, we will provide you with as much support as we can without actually being there, sitting there, helping you and your students type it in. But our goal is to make it straightforward, answer any questions that you have, make it so that the games that the kids create can be part of this larger collection of global games that are being submitted. The G4C Student Challenge Handbook, again, you can pull it off of the G4C Student Challenge website. You will also get it in your emails from us with the useful links that you can pull from. Almost everything you can think of will be in there. The instructions on how to submit to the portal, what that needs to be, all of that will be in there. It's a hugely informative resource. That said, if you have questions, you can always ask us as well. But that is a great, great starting point as far as what you need to know as far as the G4C Student Challenge piece. The one thing that we will highlight is, because I know a number of folks are doing digital games, planning on doing digital games, just because of the nature of Global Game Jam. Although you can do tabletop games, as I mentioned, and a lot of folks do that. I think we see more of those with GGJ Next than we do percentage-wise with the jam, the January jam we do for adults, because it is a great way to get kids engaged and excited about game design. But for the GGJ Next Jam games, the G4C Student Challenge, if you're doing a digital game, the games do need to be playable on a web browser and accessible via URL. So they will need to be browser games. They need to be created using a free or open platform, probably what you're already planning to use, or have your kids using, Scratch, Unity, GameMaker, Godot, any of those. So can be used. If you have questions, feel free to ask us. And then you can upload to the GGJ Next IO page to post your game. We're trying to make it simple for you guys. So if you need to, if you say, where are we going to post them? We do have a GGJ Next itch page that you can upload those to as far as where the URL is. You will then also need to submit to the G4C portal, but all of this will come from us once you've got your site registered. We don't want to overwhelm you with things in the before stages, but we will make sure that before you get to your jam, you have everything you need to be able to do that. So yes, and then the other formats will be available too. Going back to the Student Challenge Handbook, it will tell you how to submit games with Minecraft, making a video around those, tabletop games, what you need to submit to have your tabletop game judged, and then character design. All of that, step by step, exactly what that involves is going to be in that Student Challenge Handbook. Really easy to follow so that you can work with your youth, or if you're working with older youth, they can follow those steps very easily so that they can get their submissions up. And so there is a language requirement to the challenge. I will say students can submit games in any language. However, to be eligible for the challenge, it's key that they have to be in English, right? The games do not have to be in English. I want to clarify that, but English-speaking judges need to be able to play and understand students' games. So, if certain things, like if they're, score, certain things are not in English, It's totally fine if it's intuitive, but the judge needs to, if it's in another language, provide, if the students can provide additional resources to enable an English-speaking judge to understand and play that game. Just so that the judges, because there's going to be folks we're working with a lot of countries, a lot of different languages, and there will not be judges for all of those languages. So English-speaking judges need to be able to play the games. But like I said, you can submit additional resources. And I know that in some places, some folks have said, oh, it all has to be in English. I want to say, first of all, do not let that language barrier be a barrier to your students participating or submitting, right? Games are not going to be judged on spelling or grammar or any of that, right? It is, you can use a tool like Google Translate and that should be sufficient, right? It's not about creating this perfect English product. It's just about creating a game and then creating that supplemental resource that can make it easier so the judges can understand what the game is about in English and go from there. And Global Game Jam, we work across a lot of countries and a lot of languages. So if you feel like the language piece will be a barrier, let us know and we will find a way. We are committed to serving you and your students. We will find a way that hopefully we can help you so that you can submit those games, so that your students can submit those games, because we do not want a language barrier to be a barrier submitting. There may be lots of challenges that can be encountered. We know from running game jams, there are always challenges that come up and things that, fall apart at the last minute and things like that. But do not let this language piece be a barrier to being part of this challenge, because that is not the goal. Our goal is how can we remove barriers that are going to keep kids from being part of this challenge, getting into game design, all of these things. So let us know. We are here to help and support you there. The key dates, so we are in February, at least as I'm recording this, but between February and March is the window to host a GGJ Next, G4C Jam. Yes, the first week of April, we will allow them. We get too deep into that, we get too close to the submission portal. And so we want to also make a little bit of a window if things change, if something comes up, if you have to move it back a couple of days. But we really are saying, the goal is making sure we're able to host those jams sometime between now, February, and the end of March, first week of April at the latest. But being able to host a GGJ Next Jam. The submissions are due the 18th, but like I said, we're asking you, pleading you, expecting you to submit those at the very end of your jam so that all of them get in there. They can be, reviewed by the judges, be part of that global group of incredible games created by kids around the world. So being sure we have that. And then in mid-May, the winners will be notified and yeah, be part of that. So the next steps, if you have not signed up for a GGJ Next Jam site and you are now completely sold and excited about this, as excited as I am, as excited about as we are at an organization, as excited about the folks at Games for Change who are running the G4C Student Challenge, you can go and sign up at globalgamejam.org, go to the box where it says host a GGJ Next site, click that, fill it in, we will be in touch. If you need more info, updates at globalgamejam.org is the best email to send it to because there's several of us, several team members that are checking that site at that email. So feel free to send an email, questions, anything you have there. Yeah, we are here to, like I said, support you in supporting the next generation of game developers and designers and creators. So yeah, that's all that we have right now about GGJ Next. We are super excited in seeing the games that your students come up with. And any way we can support you, just let us know. That's what we're here for. Thanks so much.